At 8:19 a.m. Malaysia time on March 8, 2014, somewhere in this, one of the most remote and unforgiving places on Earth, a signal died. In that instant, 239 people vanished. Not in an explosion, not with a distress call, just gone. Like they'd flown into a void and the Earth had swallowed them whole. 10 years later, despite the largest search in aviation history, despite finding pieces of the plane washed up on distant shores, we still don't know why. We don't know who was flying it in those final hours, and we don't know exactly where it rests on the ocean floor. To understand how a Boeing 777, one of the safest aircraft ever built, could simply disappear in the age of GPS and constant surveillance, we have to go back to the moment when everything was still normal. Back to Gate C1, Kuala Lumpur International Airport. March 7, 2014, 11:30 p.m. For most of the 239 people boarding Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, this was just another red-eye to Beijing. Business travelers, families, a group of Chinese artists returning from a calligraphy exhibition, 20 employees from a tech company called Freescale Semiconductor. None of them knew they were about to board the most famous ghost ship of the modern age. In the cockpit, two men prepared for a routine 5.5-hour flight. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, married with 3 children, an 18,000-hour veteran pilot, by all accounts, a man at the top of his game. Next to him sat First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid, just 27 years old. This was his final training flight before a formal examination. His whole career was ahead of him. At 12:42 a.m., Flight 370 pushed back from the gate. 7 minutes later, it was airborne, climbing into the darkness over the South China Sea. For the next 40 minutes, everything was perfect. The plane climbed to 35,000 feet. The crew radioed air traffic control. The automated system sent routine health reports back to Malaysia Airlines headquarters. Everything was textbook. At 1:07 a.m., the aircraft communications system, known as ACARS, sent its last message: all systems normal. 12 minutes later, at 1:19 a.m., as the plane approached the invisible border between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace, the controller in Kuala Lumpur issued a standard handoff instruction. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Good night. Malaysian 370. It was the last time anyone would hear from Flight 370. 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., the plane's transponder, the device that tells air traffic control where you are, how high you are, how fast you're going, just stopped. On civilian radar screens across Southeast Asia, MH370 had ceased to exist. But here's the thing. The plane hadn't crashed. Not yet. While civilian controllers were staring at empty screens, wondering what had happened, military radar was still watching, and what it saw was impossible. Immediately after the transponder went dark, the unidentified blip that was MH370 executed a precise, deliberate turn. It reversed course, from northeast to southwest. It flew back across Malaysia, threading the needle between Malaysian and Thai airspace like it was trying not to wake anyone up. This wasn't a malfunction. Planes don't accidentally fly evasive patterns. Someone turned that aircraft around. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. For the next hour, the ghost plane flew across the Malay Peninsula, past the island of Penang, and out over the Andaman Sea. At 2:22 a.m., it flew beyond the range of military radar and disappeared again. But on the ground, chaos. Vietnamese controllers started asking where the plane was at 1:38 a.m. The Malaysians had no answer. And here's the unbelievable part. It took 4 hours before Malaysia officially activated a search and rescue operation. 4 hours. By the time search planes and ships were scrambling toward the South China Sea, MH370 was hundreds of miles away, flying in the opposite direction. And nobody knew. For days, the world watched as an international armada combed the wrong ocean. 26 countries, dozens of ships and aircraft, all looking in a place the plane had never been. And then, a breakthrough. Not from radar, not from wreckage, but from the most unexpected place imaginable, a satellite company in London that had never been in the business of finding lost planes. Engineers at Inmarsat were reviewing their logs when they noticed something strange. After MH370's transponder and communication systems had been shut off, one system was still on. The satellite data unit, basically the aircraft's phone connection to the ground. Every hour the satellite had pinged the plane just to see if it was still there. And every hour, for 7 hours after it vanished from radar, the plane had pinged back. It was the digital equivalent of a heartbeat. And it meant one terrifying thing. MH370 had kept flying for nearly 7 more hours, on autopilot, southward, into the void. Using a technique that had never been tried before, the engineers analyzed the timing and frequency of those signals. They couldn't give an exact location, but they could give a direction, a path. And when they traced it on a map, it led to one of the most remote places on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean, 2,000 miles from the nearest land, miles deep, a graveyard of storms and darkness. On March 24, 2014, 16 days after the plane disappeared, the Malaysian Prime Minister held a press conference. It is with deep sadness and regret that Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 ended in the southern Indian Ocean. The families didn't want to believe it. They couldn't, because if it was true, it meant everyone they loved had been flying on a ghost plane for hours, powerless, silent, heading toward oblivion. What followed was the most expensive search in aviation history. Australia, Malaysia, and China joined forces. They sent ships equipped with cutting-edge sonar into the roaring 40s, a region so violent, so deep, that most of the sea floor had never been mapped. For 3 years, they scanned 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor. They found shipwrecks from the 1800s, underwater volcanoes, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, but no plane. In January 2017, they gave up, but the ocean had started giving up its secrets. In July 2015, a man walking on Réunion Island, east of Madagascar, thousands of miles from the search area, found a piece of wing. It was confirmed, MH370. Over the next few years, more than 20 pieces of the plane washed ashore across Africa. Engine cowlings, interior panels, a piece of the horizontal stabilizer with the words "no step" still visible. Each piece was a clue, and each clue deepened the mystery. Because when investigators examined the wing fragments, they found something strange. Some pieces suggested the plane had hit the water at high speed, a death dive, nose first, everyone already gone. But other pieces showed damage consistent with a controlled ditching, flaps extended, a pilot trying to land on the ocean. So which was it? Did the plane spiral out of control when it ran out of fuel? Or was someone awake in that cockpit, steering it to the very end? And that's when investigators started asking the question no one wanted to ask. The question that still haunts this case. What if it wasn't an accident? Malaysian police searched Captain Zahari's home. They seized his personal flight simulator, a sophisticated setup he'd built himself. And when FBI investigators in the United States recovered deleted data from the hard drive, they found something chilling. a simulated flight, plotted less than a month before MH370 disappeared. The route? South, over the Indian Ocean, ending in the same remote area. Fuel exhaustion, no return. But here's the problem. Despite months of investigation into his finances, his personal life, his politics, investigators found nothing. No suicide note, no financial trouble, no mental health crisis, no motive. The official Malaysian report, released in 2018, concluded that someone with deep knowledge of the Boeing 777 had manually taken control. But it couldn't or wouldn't say who or why. For the families, the ambiguity was torture, because without wreckage, without the black boxes, they were left in limbo, not knowing, not able to grieve, not able to move on. They call it ambiguous loss, a grief that has no end because the story has no ending. MH370 changed aviation forever. Because of what happened that night, every plane that crosses an ocean now has to report its position every 15 minutes. If something goes wrong, it transmits automatically, every minute. The black boxes now have 90-day batteries instead of 30. Cockpit voice recorders now record 25 hours instead of 2. The technology exists now to make sure a plane can never just disappear. Not like that. Not again. But somewhere out there, 2.5 miles beneath the surface, in the cold and the dark, MH370 is still waiting. With its black boxes, its answers, and 239 people who never came home. In the end, MH370 isn't just a story about a missing plane. It's a story about the things we can't control. About how, even in a world of satellites and supercomputers and instant communication, some mysteries endure, some questions remain unanswered, and some people never stop searching.